Hello students, welcome to lecture 10 of PCS Booster Course. Topic for today's discussion is from Environment and Ecology section. We'll be decoding IAS. Now this IAS word immediately might sound like Indian Administrative Service, but in Environment and Ecology it also represents invasive alien species. So already we have seen over the years in UPSC as well as state services, occasionally this word finds mention in either options of various questions, or there have been few questions which have been dedicated to invasive or alien species. So you should be clear about what exactly are these species, what is their role, what are the specific examples which are making headlines. And since we are in this particular series catering to Punjab Civil Service, we will be also highlighting examples from Punjab, species which are considered invasive alien species in state of Punjab. So basically this lecture will dwell around the concept, what exactly makes them special, what are the key examples, what is the Punjab dimension, and what are the initiatives to tackle this emerging problem. So without wasting any time, as you could see on your screen, this image represents a particular species which is just appearing like a traveler who has just been coming for side screen, but once it visits your home or ecosystem, it establishes its authority, and within period of time you would see the native species being threatened because it becomes a direct competitor for the basic resources. So this is where the concept of this invasive alien species comes into the picture. So as we see, alien is a generalized term which we refer to something which is not originally inhabitant or native of that part. So let's first of all decode the exact definitions. So the main convention in which this concept got attention was related to biodiversity, because biodiversity ecologists are quite concerned about conservation of native, which we call endemic species. So they consider invasive species a generalized threat for their original ecosystem. So that's where the definitions got framed first of all. So as per CBD 1992 Convention on Biodiversity, as well as Indian law has also emulated the same definition. So from Maine's perspective, the definition holds it is a species which is non-native organism whose introduction and spread threatens the biodiversity, ecosystem services, or human well-being, because we know our entire world is interconnected and each species plays a definite ecological role. But once any species which is not originally part of ecosystem is introduced unintentionally by human beings, it is likely to be catastrophic for entire ecosystem, and the vicious cycle is likely to bring down the entire ecosystem in no time. So basically this threat might not seem initially, but over a period of years you will see the dynamics of food chain will alter drastically courtesy the invasive species. Coming to the second definition, now India enacted Biodiversity Act in 2002 mainly to check biopiracy as well as to promote the conservation of biodiversity sites. But one of the themes also catered to the invasive species as well. And currently our Wildlife Protection Act also tries to address the same. So National Biodiversity Authority, which was created as per Biodiversity Act, has also defined it as species outside their natural range that establish and proliferate, causing ecological as well as economic harm. So here the key word once again refers to outside their natural habitat. For example, there could be some American species which has quite a major ornamental value, and you just introduce that species into your mainland where the climate as well as other system may not be suitable. But surprisingly, if that species adapted to that particular ecosystem, it may threaten the similar species in no time. So that's where the concept of invasive alien species comes into the picture. So from definition point of view, when you will read it twice, it would be quite clear that these are some non-native species which have been accidentally or intentionally introduced by human beings, probably for some economic reason, but in long run they are damaging our original ecosystem. Now, coming to their characteristics, it is generally such species are adapt quite, you could say, strongly in different ecosystems because their survival instincts are quite, you could say, myriad, as well as these common characteristics makes them a headache for even the persons who have to tackle this. As you could see on your scheme, they might appear aesthetically pleasing. So this is a clear case where a species which might be appearing aesthetically pleasing may not be good from the application point of view. The first and foremost characteristic is that they have high adaptability. They can thrive in a damaged or a disturbed ecosystem, and if it's a new ecosystem, it's a tailor-made case for them to emerge as a dominant species in that ecosystem. So basically, their adaptability instincts are comparatively higher than the native species, which makes them a challenge in itself. Then the second trait we need to focus is that they have aggressive growth rate. It's not that a bamboo like species which you will sow and you have to wait for years to sprout. Immediately once a single species is planted, within no time 100 of similar units would be dominating the landscape, and in no time you will feel that your manpower would feel that they cannot just do the removal in single night. So basically they outcompete native species for basic nutrients. For light, they would be grow taller in height. They might be a competitor for light. When you are giving some particular NPK like fertilizer or nutrient, their roots would probably deep suited. They will absorb them faster. For water also, their absorption rate might be a larger one. So basically you can say interspecific competition or struggles comes into the picture, as Darwin had highlighted, and in those struggles they emerge victorious, whereas the endemic or native species could not just adapt to the changing scenario. And nature is quite cruel. It's only the strongest and well adapted species which survive in long run. Now, the reproductive advantage, they typically breed rapidly due to vegetative propagation or to simpler method of propagation. At times, some native species have complex method of reproduction and they cannot bypass the seasonal or other variation. Whereas in case of this native species, they are quite aggressive and have a distinct reproductive advantage. Now, other part is we have seen that in lot of animals we have seen as this scenario as well. There is absence of a definite predator because that species is quite new. Even the conventional prey predator population are not able to adjust their ecological role. Some prey might feel that they are a predator, where a predator might feel they are their own companion, or their unique, colorful, and other pattern may have a surprise element. So typically predators are not, their specific predator sense will not be present in that given ecosystem, so their population tends to outnumber the native ones once again. So basically we can say if they have been in their original habitat, there have been a nature's predator to keep a check on them, but since you have just implanted them to a new ecosystem, the original predators remained in their original habitat, so that becomes another complicating dimension. And coming to economic ecological impact, they will alter the soil chemistry, nutrient balance would be affected, biogeochemical chemicals would see incremental changes, hydrology and crop yields, as which are crucial for our agriculture, also get altered in no time if it's a particular plant which is being implanted in agriculture field. So basically the characteristics clearly highlight these species should ideally not be there in your ecosystem because they are going to bring a permanent alteration in the entire dynamics of ecology. So, re-emphasizing in short, what exactly are the threats? The first and foremost is the displacement, or you could say reduction in number of flora and fauna on a drastic scale. Agricultural losses, since they will be competing for light, water, nutrients, your all those probably, you could say, prediction of economic growth of crop yield of particular crop are going to be affected initially marginally, and then in long run you might see even drop in productive, and you might need higher input cost to get that desired yield. Now, health hazards are also sometimes associated. It's not a generalized point. At times, some species might be releasing some pollens, or some of the weeds might release some chemicals which might cause allergic reaction or some respiratory or skin reaction, because you might have heard about Congress grass. Will be just highlighting them in example. Typically when you come in that accidental contact, there is a itching sensation on that particular skin lesion, and also a lot of people tend to complain of respiratory coughing, sneezing episodes being exposed to allergen. So even though they might not be life threatening, but still they affect quality of life, and their, you could say, problematic effect cannot be underestimated. Another risk associated with them, once again with only minor of, you could say, species, is that they can carry risk of a forest fire as well, since at times they are highly combustible species, especially Lantana camara, because this species, even though it's a scientific name, it always dominates headlines in temperate regions. It increases the frequency of wildfires. So basically, one of the risk factor, it becomes one of the risk factor in spreading those forest fires. If they had been a native species, they might have been little more adaptable to such incidents. So basically, once again, this is a one-sided dimension where we have clearly highlighted that their role is quite controversial, and ideally an ecosystem should remain free of such species unless you are growing in your homeland for some ornamental decorative purpose. But in a specific field, agricultural field, your main crop is being grown, such species are a big deal. Let's now focus on some specific examples. Once again, as you could see on your screen, Lantana camara holds the distinction of being the most headache species for the ecologists, because it's the main, you could say, the invasive species. Then Congress grass is in scientific name is Parthenium. Prosopis julifera, and the most common which you see is water hyacinth. Often you must have seen some lakes or some water bodies. A large plant is floating on the surface, but within no time it hijacks the entire water body or pond, and it outnumbers the ecosystem. And typically you will see a swampy, marshy type algal bloom type scenario appearing, which will totally erode the original nature of the water ecosystem, and in no time you would see the water level dropping down, and eventually it might convert into a swampy, marshy peatland, which substituted by a land ecosystem. So basically, water hyacinth has been one of the species which has already been asked in exam. Lantana camara has been asked through current affairs section. So as you could see, once again, these species are quite aesthetically pleasing. So at times the look is misleading because they are a major competitor in our ecosystems. Currently, we have seen in Bandipur, Madhumulai, these are important tiger reserves, as we have seen 50 years of Project Tiger being completed, and these tiger reserve were in the limelight. So they have been now threatened by similar Lantana camara species. So these species were probably accidentally introduced by some person, and soon on later they have been dominating the fields, and the entire ecological balance is being shifted, because once the native species are missing, probably the deer and other species which were feeding on them, their number might deplete, and eventually the keystone species like tiger, they might get affected as well. And also the agriculture part, once again in Parthenium, is re-emphasized. Now let's now focus on the Punjab dimension, because most of you who are watching this particular set of video have mainly come from Punjab dimension. So in Punjab also these species are quite dominant one, and they when you will visit their forest website, you will see these examples which have been highlighted. So first and foremost is once again the national invasive species of Parthenium hysterophorus. No need to mug up the entire scientific name, but at least the common name like Gajar Ghas, Congress Ghas, or Parthenium, if you will able to do it, would definitely hold you in a good state, because we are expecting PCS level to be almost on levels of UPSC. So there can be a question in which the multiple statements can be framed if they tend to ask this section. So first statement might be regarding their definition, second the national example, third could be the Punjab dimension. So second example is once again the national one only, Lantana camara, the image which you saw flowering plants. And then we have a billy goat weed which is called Agratum conzizoides. So basically this is another tough example, though it's not have been in news for quite long time. So basically even if you not mug up, it is acceptable. And the water hyacinth has been problem in entire North India, right from Haryana, Punjab. So Ishornia crassipes is the scientific name. So typically it's a species referred as Ishornia species. So basically, whether it's hill, whether it's plains, or whether it's wetland, all these species fare intense threat by these alien invasive species. So apart from this, Prosopis vilaiti babul is also the similar headache for, you could say, native farmers. So make sure in such question all of the above answer is the key trick, but still it's lot better if you could mug up at least 2 3 names from this list. First start with their common names, but once you are comfortable, then the scientific names can be mugged up, because we have seen even in last PCS to last PCS also there was a specific question about the state bird of Punjab, even though the easy name it's given Northern Goshawk, but they had intentionally asked the scientific name, the Accipiter gentialis. So we cannot underestimate the examiner to just frame a tricky questions if he wishes to from this section. And finally, what exactly is the government doing to tackle this menace? Apart from awareness campaign, introducing this theme in your ecology textbooks, there are some specific measures. So we have seen the National Biodiversity Authority taking a lead, since they not only defied the concept and have been promoting aggressively, they have also designed National Biodiversity Action Plan, which emphasizes the management of such species, and before they become a headache, you have to just target them at the initial stage itself. Then the CBD convention, which was enacted in 1992, India is not only signatory, timely ratified, and under this only we enacted Biodiversity Act. So it finds mention of, you could say, the control of invasive species. So basically from national and international angle also we are on the same page. And then NBA coordinates these awareness drives, as we are also the content which you are seeing is used from their website only. So we can say they are doing a decent job, and the important species which are being at national level are also finding them in the state perspective as well. And apart from that, in sea also, because you have to understand this topic is not only limited to animal and plants in terrestrial ecosystem. Even in sea, we see when some cargo ships or oceanic research vessel or defense vessels are going from one place to another, there is a risk of ballast water release, and they accidentally sometimes tend to carry such invasive species, especially in Arctic and Antarctic. A special care is ensured that we do not unintentionally introduce some competitor in those fragile ecosystems, because they would be more vulnerable to damage. So basically, Ballast Water Management Convention has also emphasized the role of invasive species. So we can say this is a easy theme to mug up. Its examiner is most likely to confuse this definition with, you could say, the pioneer species, climax species, keystone species, edge species, or you could say the typical, we could say the predator prey combination. So make sure you are clear about what exactly invasive species are, their specific examples, and finally the control and the characteristics. So I hope we have reached a stage where the first phase of our, you could say, PCS booster course has been completed. Now you have 10 specific themes, majority from science, environment and general science section, which you could revise in your quest to crack this examination. The second phase from 11 to 20 lectures will begin shortly. So stay connected. If you have any specific queries, you can always walk at Civil Service Gurukul Academy, or you could just ask them in comment section. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.